Kairete pantes, egoimi Iacobos tonalides, ho patrologistes, que semeron volumoe dilegeste peri tes aporias, tutestin post gemes nun, tautais tais gemerais, neas lexes periton neoston genomenon, kai ton machenon, encoptin, hurein. Tutestin, today I want to talk to you about how do we, as contemporary speakers of ancient Greek, coin new koine or new ancient Greek words. I say new koine words because in a sense they have to be koine because of what we're doing. That is, even if we speak Attic, if we speak a different particular dialect of ancient Greek, the challenge is how do we, as continuing speakers of an ancient language, respectfully create new words to speak about more recent things. Technology, contemporary events, those kinds of things. It's a question a couple of you have asked me. I've written about it a little bit, and what I'm going to do is get out of the screen and screencast from my computer and walk you through the resources that I use to think through these issues and some of the principles I use to apply to thinking through how do I coin new Koine words. Hope you enjoy. So what I've set up here are a number of tabs that show the various tools I use to try to think through how can I create a Greek word that is either a neologism or an appropriate word for a concept not found in the ancient world. And the first thing to say about this is because the history of Greek is different to, for example, the history of Latin, the way to approach this is more complicated and more difficult than Latin. And so what I have here first, there's a couple of English Greek dictionaries, Woodhouse, Young, and Fradostorff. So here we have Young, and so I've put in car as my word, and that's got me to this page. Scroll down, car, he gives us harma, harmatos, and also says sea chariot. I think this is one good solution for the word car. I think you can see the parallel with Latin and people's use of carros, a chariot, a cart, anything that's a vehicle of this sort, finding an appropriate Greek word that works in the ancient world that describes and particularly has a path to what we have as modern words in modern languages works quite well. Fradostorff is quite similar. It's a little bit later, 1874, whereas Young is 1849. One of the words that we might talk about is bicycle. Does Fradostorff have bicycle? This is the page asking us for money, which is very reasonable. Fradostorff is later a little bit differently, and we can scroll down here, BIC, no entry for bicycle. We'll come back to bicycle a little bit later. One of the other things I might do is work through Latin, especially if I know what Latin is doing. There's no entry here for car. Really what we want is Smith and Hall. Smith and Hall is an English-Latin dictionary that is quite useful and quite good. Here Smith and Hall gives me equivalent to chariot kurus. And so what I would do here is I would go to this dictionary is a Latin-Greek dictionary. And so if I put in kurus and scroll down, here we go, kurus harma. Right, and what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make sure that I understand the sense of the Latin word, which of course I can use some Latin lexicons to do, but I want to see what does the Latin word map to in Greek, what are my options? I can also see oikema here, and I know that this is related to various types of vehicles, conveyance, ochomai. You can see here the phrase poruestai ep hamaxes. This is giving me some other tools where I might be able to go and come up with something else. My default dictionary for ancient Greek these days is the Brill Dictionary of Ancient Greek. This is in the Logos edition, and so I might look up ochema. Okema is a general word for a vehicle or a wagon. So I could use this as another alternative to harama or hamaksa. Hamaksa is also, I think, a pretty good word. A wagon, a chariot. You could understand that we have a couple of options here, just as we have a few words for a car in English. My last option, not looking anything up, is to go with autokinetos, no entry for autokinetos. Another option I use is to look at what the contemporary Greek uses. Autokinetos. Right, and so that's where we might go back and say, oh, autokineto, that is a modern Greek word, but I can see it's formed from very understandable ancient Greek components, autos, and kinetos. I'd turn it into a neuter autokineton, something that is an automobile. Automobile is just the English version from the Latin, which corresponds to autokineton. And so that would be a perfectly reasonable word. You can see here also hamaksa is given as a modern Greek equivalent as well. And so this is one way, particularly if you know modern Greek, to find a word that works in modern Greek and then work backwards. Another thing we can go to is the Neo-Latin Lexicon project. I don't know how up to date this is, but there are options for Latin and Greek. I feel like the Greek is underdeveloped here. We can see that some of these terms are more specific than others. You can see there's not a lot of words here, and so actually this is more useful to look at the Latin. If you go to Latin, look up car, see what we get. Here you go, car, number of options. Auto, mataria, raida. And so raida, or auto raida, is another very common word used among contemporary Latin speakers for a car. And so we could ask the question again, what happens when we go and look at raida in our Latin to Greek options? I can't see anything here for a raida. So raida is not given here as in my Latin to Greek dictionary. That's a bit of a dead end. What I could do is I could go away, do some more lexicon work, understand raida as a Latin word a bit more accurately, and then come back and try and find a Greek equivalent. And this is why I said at the start that often Latin is a help, because Latin's history as a used language, whether spoken or written, extends further than Greek's does because of the way Greek is impacted by the fall of Constantinople and the history of Greece and Greek speakers and Greek language under the Ottoman Empire, and then modern Greek and the way it developed. There's more Neo-Latin from the last 500 years that deals with concepts that are closer to what we need. Another option is to use lexicon Hellenikon inikosi, hypo bedweru paraskivos monon, kai hypo Nikolaou di orthomenon. Bedware does amazing work in Greek. This is a version of lexicon in pictures. I'll scroll down a little bit. There's a table of contents. I have partly tabbed my version to find things quickly. Right, and so here's a number of pictures, and so you look at this and you say, oh, what do I do with all these? I'm after something that might talk about a plane, and so I can scroll back up to the relevant page here, 80.10, so we're in section 80.10, look at picture 10, go, oh, that's a Zeppelin, that's a blimp, aeroploion is what he gives for that. But I can look at some other words. 80.1 is talking about an airport, or an airfield, aerodromion, aerolimen. You probably use aerolimen for an airport. You might use aerodromion for something more like the runway or an airfield. And so you can see that there are a number of options here. Hydroplanon, aerostaton, helicopteron. I find bedware to be quite reliable for lots of different words. One of the things I would often do is go away and think about the components that have been used, what this word has been derived from, and whether I think it's a good fit or not. So this is another option. It doesn't have everything. It's a relatively limited lexicon, but because it has pictures and it's mapped to contemporary concepts, you can often find what you're looking for there. Let's go back to my bicycle question. No entries here for a bicycle. When we talk about a bicycle in Latin, what would we use? No entries. Not very helpful. So then we can go to the Neo-Latin lexicon. Let's go back to here, Latin, B for bicycle. Another way you can search is just to, we'll go with bike. Birota. This is a fairly common word for a bicycle spoken by contemporary speakers of Latin. Birota, I don't think it's going to give me any entries on Latin to Greek. Biremis, something with two oars, not very helpful. Dipodes by pedalis, not exactly quite right. But you will encounter people who will use dikuklos to refer to a bicycle that is a two-wheeled vehicle. If you go to a bicycle, this is just Google Translate, podelato in modern Greek, podelato. This is actually what I use in ancient Greek to talk about a bicycle. You can see that podelato, very easy to turn this into an ancient Greek word, to podelaton. That's how I'd form a neuter noun. And these two, the two parts of this word is from, well, here's another option here we can go. Wiktionary, podelato. If you look up words in Wiktionary, often you'll get some etymological information, and this is just what we need here. Pous, podos, and elauno, something that's moved, that's driven by the feet. This is a perfect word to use for describing a bicycle in ancient Greek. That's how I would form this word. Other things we could talk about? If we want to talk about firearms and guns, we might again begin here. If we go to gun in Latin, I'm going to tell you that what we're going to get is scopeton, a whole range of derivative terms, but let's just stick to the basics here. And so you can see here there are a number of options in Neo-Latin, and if you go to the citations you'll find some sources. Some of these are more complicated than others, but the word I use is sclopetum. That's my generic word for a gun or a firearm in Latin. That is not going to be of much help to us when we go to this. But we should always try. Right, there is nothing under SCL here. So then we might go again back to talking about words here. Hoplon, right? So this is just related to hoplon. You could use hoplon as a generic word for a firearm. Purobolo, that's a perfectly reasonable derivation. These are some of the ways you could try and make an ancient Greek word that would express the concept of a firearm. There is one other option for looking up the word gun. It's this text, The Greek War of Independence, which is an easy Greek reader by Charles Douglas Chambers, and it is a tale of the Greek War of Independence, 1821 to 1827, written in ancient Greek. And modelled upon Thucydides. And so in the preface, he talks about part of the challenges. And so, accepting proper names and official titles, the text does not contain a dozen words which do not occur in Thucydides. It is really quite well done and restricted to Thucydides. And so he's kept his vocabulary constrained, and he has avoided introducing two words, except for this. Only two post-classical words have been found necessary: puritis, gunpowder, and monasterion, monastery, both of which are classical in form. And so puritis, I think I would, because of this, I would talk about probably a perubolon in ancient Greek for a firearm. Let me read here. Socrates' view that it is possible periton neoste gegenemenon archaios ipen is certainly true of this period. It's possible to talk about things that have happened recently, but to speak of them archaios, anciently, is true. And I think that's true of ancient Greek in terms of speaking about modern things. There is another option for finding new Greek words or working out how to speak about modern things, ta neoste gegenomena, archaios ipen dialegestai, and that's Acropolis World News site, maintained by Juan Roderch from the University of St. Andrews. He produces amazing materials, generally free to download, or you can purchase a print version online. And so, for example, you can just see here, these are recent news articles, quite short. That is the United States of America, Ukraine, very clear, Ukraine, Iran, all with the date, Korea, North Korea. And first of all, if you read through these, they're relatively easy to read. You might need to look up a few words. Names he'll often just give the English version, unless they're easily turned into Greek. You can see here that we're talking about Elon Musk. By reading this kind of Greek, you can actually get a sense of how to deal with modern concepts, very contemporary concepts from the news, in ancient terms. I don't know that Juan does a lot of coining of new terms, but this is a way to, again, train yourself to go, how would I speak about these kinds of things? For example, proedros. This is the term he's using here for president. It's not the only way you might talk about a president. Tu plus iota tu, Elon Musk. So I might talk about a millionaire, someone who's incredibly rich, so on and so forth. Another example coming down to the entry for North Korea. Hetes Boreas Koreas ton angelmaton hetaira KCNA engelek tes hoti ede ten siderodromiken hodon. That is a railroad, a railway road, very clearly. Siderodromike, that's a standard kind of formation for talking about railroads. And then hodon, clear. Tetelutekasin he apotes Boreas Koreas diatu tumen potamu isten Russian ferry. That's relatively understandable. All you might struggle with is what that is. And once you know that this refers to a railroad, you're on your way and you know, here is an adjective formation that refers to things relating to rail, iron paths. And so that's a bit of an overview of how I would go around approaching ancient Greek words and word formation. If there's a particular word you'd like to understand how I might go around forming it, let me know in the comments, and I'd be happy to perhaps make a short video showing you how I would tackle it or otherwise respond. My main principle, or one of my guiding principles, is to be linguistically conservative. And so to ask myself, would an ancient Greek speaker understand what I was saying about if I used this word and this word formation? And if they were unsure, would they, if they saw the concept, agree that the way I've described it is the right way to describe it? That is, would it be understandable by an ancient Greek speaker according to the rules of ancient Greek word formation, etymology, and using compounds and concepts that they understand? That might require more or less periphrasis, talking around a topic, but is it a genuinely ancient Greek feeling word that conforms to the rules of the language as it was spoken, expressed in a way that refers to a modern or contemporary concept. Well, there you have it. That's me talking at my computer. Hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you found some new resources. Again, if there's a word that you want me to explore or talk through how I might go about coining something for it, let me know in the comments below, and let me know if there are resources you're using or ways you're finding to create new words in Neo-Ancient Greek for today's world. Eroste.